chair for the meeting today, so
Thank you.
I think we're waiting for a couple more people to show up, but it's after 9, so I'll get started off here. I'm Mark Ambrosi, I'm transportation planner at Strafford Regional Planning. We're going to start off by going around and doing some introductions.
I'm Victoria Parmley from Northwood on the planning board.
I'm Marcia Gassis. I'm from Dover, and I'm the planning board chair in Dover.
Bob Jaffin, Rochester.
Brian Tapscott, Somersworth.
Paul Lockwood, New Hampshire DES.
Ed Comeau, Brookfield.
Rod Nichols, Coast.
Sandy Keynes, Rochester.
Beverly Cray, UNH.
Glenn Garrison, DOT.
Tom Clark, Dover.
Stephen Jeffrey, Barrington.
Cynthia Copeland, Strafford Regional.
Marilyn Barton, Strafford Regional Planning.
Dan Camara, Strafford Regional Planning.
All right, so next on the agenda is moving down to staff communications. I think Cynthia had first communication to policy committee.
Yes. Welcome, everyone. I am only going to be here for just this opening part because I am actually going to upstate New York to visit my family this weekend. So it's a long trip. And it's going to take me a whole day to get there and a whole day to get back. So in order to have some time with my family, I'm leaving early. So I just wanted to say welcome. We have some new commissioners here today. Welcome. I'm so glad to see you. And I think that's it. So
There's another new girl from Rochester that came into the planning office, and Ken spoke with her. We thought she would come today, but...
Yeah, so thank you so much. So you're going to wear two hats. You're going to be Dover as a commissioner, but you also are staff at Rochester, so that's really good and welcome. And we have training. And the major news that I have is that our bookkeeper of 12 years, Linda Osborne, has tendered her resignation. And so that's effective March 6th. And she will be moving on to other endeavors, and we're all very grateful for all of the time that she's put in at Strafford for the commission and the MPO, and she's done a great job with our contracts and our audit and our indirect cost rates and filling out grants and grant reports and all of the mechanics of running this organization. So we have Marilyn's helping me with an advertisement, and we're going to be out recruiting this weekend and have a very short process turnaround because payroll's every 2 weeks and monthly reports are due every month. Some of them are due on the 1st, so we're moving forward, and we wish Linda the best, and I know DOT will miss her. Yes. Because she does a really good job and has been a model for other organizations over the last decade. And in fact, we were the first to do the indirect cost rates in the proposal. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So, which opened up a whole new world. So that's my news, and I just hope that you all take the time over the next 3 weeks to give your best regards and best wishes to Linda and wish her well, and thanks and appreciation for all of her work here. So that's it, right?
Yeah, sounds good. All right, moving along to item 3.1, we're going to open public hearing for public comment on the first public comment period for the draft coordinated public transit human services transportation plan. So I guess I'm going to just begin by giving a quick overview of kind of the last month since we went out to the initial public comment period. I think we went out to the initial public comment period around January 15th or 16th. As is kind of reflected in the minutes or in the memo, just after we went out to public comment period, we met with staff from Rockingham Planning Commission, Strafford Planning Commission, went to the ACT Executive Committee meeting to meet with the Executive Committee from ACT to deal with, or to solicit comments for the coordinated plan. There were some key members in that meeting, including Diane Smith, who's really running the coordination effort for ACT, or the primary point person for ACT on the coordination effort. And she hadn't been available for a few weeks beforehand because of some personal reasons. So it was our first chance really to touch base with her and solicit comments for the plan. We were really hoping to do that before the public comment period opened, but we didn't have the opportunity until a few days after. So from that meeting, we received a long list of comments. For most of the chapters, they were primarily technical comments, talking about language, changing how things were phrased, how things were written, correcting a few, misnomers in the document. However, in Chapter 6 and Chapter 8, there were more significant comments that really were more of a wholesale rewriting of the entire chapters. The document as we presented it for public comment period, it was our opinion that the document was adequate, or more than adequate, to meet the regulations or the mandates, I guess, set up in the document for receiving certain types of federal transit funding. Unfortunately, we had a number of comments that were pretty significant, so the changes are pretty large for those chapters. So first off, I guess I'm going to just go through and give some examples of the comments that we received. There's also a list in the packet of the comments that we wrote up and how we addressed them. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's quite a few, but I'll start through here. So a lot of the comments in the early chapters were very minor. They were just small changes to language. I think in this paragraph here, the highlighted paragraph, a few words were changed. There were a few cross-outs, which you can see on the comment sheet. I think, yeah, the major change here was throughout the state, changed to within each state coordinating council identified region is really the primary change. Moving along through some of the other chapters, Chapter 3, we had similar comments in scope, I'd say. And actually, it looks like we don't have Chapter 3 here in the comment sheet, but there were minor changes again to the language in the highlighted paragraph here that were pretty much just changes to language and clarifying a few things about the paragraph. Moving along again, Chapter 5. This is a chapter that we worked on here at SRPC. Primarily the comments in this chapter were to shift around some of the parts of the chapter, so moving around some of this information about taxi cabs and livery services down to the end of the chapter. There were some clarifying that went on when we were describing agencies, and some updates about the status of the agencies that we didn't have at the time when we went out to public comment period. And further along in the chapter, Diane was able to provide a more complete overview of the service gap analysis that ACT had completed in the spring of 2010. They hadn't had an executive summary beforehand, and she was able to provide us with an executive summary of their findings from that study just after the public comment period. And moving down again, the last major changes for Chapter 5 really came in Section 5.6, where we had sent out a survey to demand response providers, and we hadn't received all the responses that we were hoping to receive at the time of the public comment period. We received 2 or 3 that kind of trickled in just after the public comment period. So once we had all of those findings, we were able to start inserting the rest of the chapter. So At the last policy meeting, I don't know if we had quite all this information in here. The tables were updated. They pretty much just changed the format of the tables and included a few key findings from the survey that were not available initially. So moving on, chapter 6, which I believe there's two copies in, or there's two different versions in the handout for the meeting here. The version without all the red writing on it was the initial version, and the one with the red writing was the comments that Diane had provided. And this is really where the biggest changes happened in the document. And I would say that the changes were primarily to, like, once again, to the language, doing a better job of clarifying and describing what was going on, where the Regional Coordinating Council for Southeast Regional New Hampshire had been in the last few years and where we're planning to go in the future. And once again, it didn't necessarily change the quality of the chapter to a huge extent. It did change some of the descriptions, and we wanted to give the public a adequate chance to review the chapter. We also added in some of the information from the original chapter 6, added that back into the chapter that gave some of the background of what were the coordination models we were looking at in the past, what have we been through, and this is really to provide some institutional memory to the public that Diane's revisions wouldn't have included. So there were a few changes in there. And then, finishing up the chapter, there were a few more minor changes, just clarifying some of the information. We're describing some of the funding opportunities. I think all the different sections of the Federal Transit Administration grant programs were modified in small ways just to clarify and update the chapters, or the descriptions a little bit. So we brought this to the TAC and went over a lot of these changes. This was a few weeks ago. We talked with Federal Highways and New Hampshire DOT at the meeting, and it was our feeling that we really needed to go back out for a second public comment period to give the public an adequate chance to respond to the changes in the document, because we recognize they were pretty significant. Due to time constraints, we had to go back out for public comment the beginning of this week, I believe. So we did not have time to review it with the policy committee. Obviously, we had to go out a few days beforehand so that we can vote on the document and have the full 30-day review period before the next policy hearing. So that's where we stand at this point. There's a second draft that's available. It's actually on our website right now. If you go to Strafford.org, into the main page, there's the notice for the second public comment period. A link that will bring you to the page where the document is, and there's the revised version out for the second public comment period that incorporates the comments that we received that are provided in the packet. So that is where the new information is, I guess, at this point. So with that, I guess open the public hearing for publics.
You're calling this a public hearing. Who in fact is making the comments if it's a public hearing?
This was the Alliance for Community Transportation, which was made up of members of the public. It's made up of demand response providers in the region. It's made up of Brad from Coast, Alliance for Community Transportation member or staff that works for them, regional planning commissions, and members of the New Hampshire state government.
Well,
You may be able to,
during the public comment period, the Alliance for Community Transportation submitted these comments. We're at a public hearing currently. We, the body, apparently are the only members of the public who are going to provide comment today, unfortunately.
So there's general public within the organizations, you're saying?
there, in the Alliance for Community Transportation, there are representatives from the general public, yes.
Yes.
But it's also advertised. Any
Yeah.
public member could.
It's at libraries also, have a notice out, now for the second one and the document available.
And anybody can comment online too, right?
People can, they can email us, they can send letters in, hard copy. I don't believe we have a forum online so that we can leave comments under the document. That's one of our initiatives for our website actually, is to provide a way where people can provide feedback right on the document, rather like you would have on, I don't know, a news website where you have comments below the article. We don't have that functionality quite yet.
Are the people that need the service, are they primarily making public comments?
There are members that need the service that are making comments at the Alliance for, or I guess in the Alliance for Community Transportation membership meetings. There are people who use the services from the public that are part of that group that have commented on the document. But as far as reaching out, I guess I don't know the mechanisms we would have to reach out, to individuals other than sending it to the library, putting it in the paper, making it available to the public in the best way that we can.
A lot of energy must go into that, because if you go to the general public and ask them, what's their involvement in this, most people don't know. I know I repeat that over and over again,
Yeah.
but it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But a lot of energy is going into getting the input from the people that are working the framework, but very little I see of the actual general public. The person that has to stand on the side of the road waiting for the buses, those types of people don't seem to be, commenting when it really affects them the most.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess a lot of the, in response to that, I'd say a lot of the direction that we have for this document comes through the Alliance for Community Transportation. They do, work directly with the public. They work with service providers that do provide services for elderly, disabled, low income, all different types of clients. And the feedback that they receive really drives their comments. So, unfortunately, it's not that direct connection to the public, but we have direct representatives for the public. And I guess, that's the goal of this room also, is to be representing the public from our communities.
Thank you.
Brad?
To the extent that this has followed the organization's policy for public comment.
Yep.
And for soliciting public comment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that I don't necessarily feel that times are changing. There are different ways to go out and get public comment. I don't necessarily feel that hearings are the way to do it anymore, myself. I think the Gasset process was an excellent example of that. But it is what as bodies we've approved. So, not to say that there can't be improvements. Unfortunately, there's also costs associated with all that additional outreach that you have to do to actually engage the folks that we're talking about, who don't naturally necessarily come out. So,
yeah. And I guess I should just clarify about this document. This document is part of the MPO's long-range transportation plan, and this document is to allow demand response providers and public transit agencies to access certain pools of funding. So this is, I guess there's a number of, there's a checklist that federal highways or federal transit basically provides, and if your document fulfills these these goals of federal transit, then it allows you access to this funding. So the real goal of this document is to gain access to the funding so that we can actually provide services to the public. Now, we want to make sure that the services that we state we're trying to provide are the right ones, and they're not just any services. But the primary purpose of this document is really to allow access to funding so that we can implement any services. Otherwise, we wouldn't have access to this funding.
On a side note, did you ever try to use survey cards to hand to somebody on the buses and the trains in order so you can get that, while they're on the bus, they're waiting a long time, they can fill out a little card, that way, because a lot of people who can't afford to have their own card do not have internet. They have no way of really communicating with you, so if you gave them a card, then they'll fill out how their service is, what do they think about that, they check it, and then you can calculate that and find out what that portion of the public actually feels about it.
We do provider surveys, or we assist with coast provider surveys where we actually ride the bus and hand out surveys to everybody who's on the bus, and we try to do a very comprehensive survey of everybody who's riding the bus. So I can't speak for the other demand response providers. I think they do get quite a bit of feedback from the public that they serve, but we don't go on those buses and hand out cards to everybody to get feedback. But we try to use that information to really guide the mission that we're standing behind in the region for our public transit. I think definitely we can do better. I think the resources becomes a big challenge when you're trying to get to every person who's riding the bus, I guess.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So I guess if there's no other public comment, close the public hearing. Once again, I guess just to remind folks, we're already out for our second public comment period. We have the updated draft. This draft, I believe, is still on the internet, or the draft that we were reviewing for this meeting is still on the internet, but I would refer you to the updated revised draft to provide comment on, rather than the older draft, because it does include or incorporate comments. All right, moving along to action items. The MPO minutes of January 20th, or Policy Committee. Have a motion to accept. All right, second. All right, open for discussion. Any comments about the draft MPO Policy Committee minutes? Hearing none, do we want to, I guess all four accepting the minutes as they are?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, a little guidance here. This is my first running of the Policy Committee meeting. Any nays?
Abstain.
Abstain.
3 abstaining? All right. So the ayes have it, and January minutes are approved. All right. We have a motion to approve the Coordinated Public Transit and Human Services Transportation Plan from the first public comment period, or not sure how we deal with this. It's on the agenda.
I'm thinking that we might have to just table this to the next meeting.
All right. Do we need a motion to table it, or no?
Motion to table.
All right.
Second.
All right. Vote on it. Ayes?
Aye.
All right. Motion's tabled, or action items tabled. Moving on to discussion items, 5.1, Dan.
All right. Intelligent Transportation Systems Plan update. I guess for those who might be new or don't know, we are currently updating our Regional Intelligent Transportation Systems Architecture and Plan. It's basically a plan that lays out the intelligent transportation system projects in our region. Some examples of those ITS projects would include open road tolling, advanced signal coordination, certain transit elements like automatic vehicle location systems. But we initially created this in 2008 with the assistance of IBI Group out of Boston, and we have gotten their assistance to complete this update again. Last Friday was our working advisory group kickoff meeting, which was very productive. I thought it went very well. We had a good turnout, about 20 people or so. And IBI basically went through the process of what the WAG, or the Working Advisory Group, would be doing, their part in this, and gave a brief overview of the national architecture and what was currently in our plan, basically our needs, stakeholders. So it was some really good conversation about some new needs that have developed in the area, maybe some technologies that have gone up, like you've seen maybe on 16 or I-95, a lot of new cameras, and of course the open road tolling in Hampton. It's certainly one of the bigger ITS accomplishments that have happened since 2008. But what I really wanted to mention today was I think the most important step in this process is happening in the next few weeks, and that's the stakeholder meetings. That's where we get all the stakeholders together, and we talk about needs, we talk about say what's happened in your agency or what's happened in your community with regards to ITS. It's really the meat and potatoes of this plan. So to really get everybody's input on this, it'll just make for a great update if we can get as much input as possible with this stakeholder meeting. We're currently putting together the agenda, creating a list of new stakeholders. But I guess I just wanted to run through that really quick because we identified a few new stakeholders, and if there are any others that you think we should have on here, please either comment now or you can certainly shoot me an email. Let me see here. Let's go down to the stakeholders. Not too far. Okay, here we go. All right, here, these bullets right here, this is where some of the new stakeholders, the city of Somersworth, that wasn't a new stakeholder. It was originally listed as the town of Somersworth. We just wanted to make it clear that it was the city of Somersworth.
Make sure you get that right now.
Yeah. So we've listed a few new ones here that we didn't have originally, and I can go to the original list in a second here, but we're changing C&J Trailways to C&J. Nashua Transit wants to do some more coordination in the region. Town of Newington, the shipyard, Maine State Police. But besides those, our original list included, just flip down to it really quick. Stakeholders. Where's it here? It's coming up. Stakeholders, here we go. Let's pull that up a little bit more. So these were the stakeholders identified originally in the initial plan. So again, you don't have to comment now if you're not quite sure, but if you have a second to look at this later and maybe you think of a stakeholder that we should have on here, please let us know. And these are just the main stakeholders too. We're certainly going to send out the invitation to everybody in policy and everybody in TAC. So we you're more than welcome to come to the stakeholder meeting. Like I said, the more people, the better, the more input we can get. It's fantastic.